and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Bailey Bridgewater. Hello, Bailey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. I love when people are doing great. A lot of people aren't, so,
It's true.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Well, thanks for being on the show, Bailey. We have never met, so this is our first encounter, and I am really happy and pleased to meet you.
And I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, awesome. So I'm just gonna lead with this question, Bailey. I was
Okay.
doing a little research. I always, look into the folks I'm interviewing, and I saw this book called Things Nutritional Consultants Say Coloring Book by Bailey Bridgewater. So I'm wondering, is this your book? And if it is, like, what's it all about?
I love that you found that. And interestingly, just a few months ago, I got the little notification from Goodreads that says something like, "Is this your book? Claim your title." And I'm like, "No, but I wish it was." There's another Bailey Bridgewater out there who's written this book, and if you looked at it, you saw that, yeah, it's a coloring book of clean swear words. So you can color in phrases like mother trucker and oh shucks. And I just so many questions about this because it's also a book of things that nutritional consultants say. So are they saying these things to patients? Are patients saying these things when they go to the nutritional consultant? But either way, I feel like I need that book because I swear really badly. And I'm always trying to stop. And if I could just color in oh shucks, I think that might help.
Yeah,
But I really want to meet this other Bailey Bridgewater because I feel like they just have to be fascinating.
that is really wild. That really is.
It's so random, but also so great.
Yeah, it is kind of random that nutritional consultants would talk like that.
Yeah, have
Yeah,
their own set of clean swear words. I'm fascinated. So if the other Bailey Bridgewater's listening, text me because I feel like we need to go have a drink.
yeah, definitely. The book was sold out on Amazon. Like they did, so it must be super popular.
I can see why, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. That's wild. That is wild. So no coloring book for this Bailey, huh?
No coloring book yet.
Oh,
Though I guess if I had a coloring book, it would be like a coloring book of crime scenes and I'm not sure if people need that.
yeah, like weapons and you know clue rooms.
That okay. Yeah, I'd buy that.
Yeah, for sure. You know what comes to mind? Remember color forms? I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like color forms, like where you would like kind of build a room with those little things and put,
Yeah. Oh, fun.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure. I don't know if they still make those anymore, but
Good question.
yeah. So, Bailey, you do have a book though
I
called
do. Yes.
called "Come Find Me in the Midnight." And this was recently released, right?
Will
Um,
be. So Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun is going to be released in November. Yep.
okay, and it is released through Bold Strokes Books, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about like what is the premise of this novel?
Sure. So Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun is about missing persons in Alaska, which is not a subject that I ever would have thought about writing about. But the story behind the book is that I was doing a writing residency in Lake Clark National Park in Alaska. Really rural. You got to get there by like a small plane and then a boat and then like some hiking. It's beautiful. It's really rural. So I was out there and I had pitched a short story collection for my time there. And so it was one of those moments where I got out there and I started writing and I just realized on that first day, like this is not the project I should be working on. And I kind of panicked because, you've only got so much time in these residencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started reading, Alaska's a very inspiring place. I started reading about Alaska, hoping I would kind of find an idea. And I started finding all these articles about the missing people who go missing from Alaska each year. 2,300 people annually disappear from Alaska.
Wow.
Twice as much as anywhere else in the US. And so, I went
wild.
kind of down, I went down this rabbit hole of like, I need to know more. But as I started to read, I started to wonder, what's it like to be the state troopers who are assigned to these cases? Each of those troopers can cover an area that's as large as my home state of Maryland.
Wow.
And you're trying to find one person.
Oh my goodness.
It's like trying to find a needle in a frozen haystack.
Yes. Yes.
So, and that's kind of what prompted the book for me, was kind of thinking, these troopers have a story, obviously. And I want to just dive in and kind of try and tell one of those stories. So the book follows Louisa Leinbach, who is a new Alaska state trooper. She's new to the force, and she's assigned one of these missing persons cases. And as she investigates, more mysteries start kind of piling on top of that mystery.
Wow. That is pretty amazing that out of like a real life situation, you created this fictional piece of work. That is great. And your time in Alaska, were you able to incorporate some of those like adventures into this book?
Yeah, to some extent, it's more the settings.
Okay.
The kind of adventures that come up in this book are not necessarily adventures I might want to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is a crime novel. But yeah, I was able to, in addition to Lake Clark, I was able to go down to Seward and spend some time there. And Seward is where the novel is primarily set.
Okay.
So there's a lot of details that come from, my time there, just watching the wildlife and just kind of learning the culture of Seward and how people are and what kinds of things they do around there. So yeah, it's definitely in there.
Oh, that's so cool. So tell us, Bailey, what is the significance of the title "Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun"?
Yeah, I started writing the book and I started calling it that right away. And then it's funny because as soon as I started pitching it to agents, Stephanie Meyer released a book called Midnight Sun, and I was like, man.
You're like, that was
Thankfully,
mine.
yeah, like thanks, Meyer. Thankfully, there should be little confusion about which book is I think hers might be about vampires and which one is not.
Uh-huh.
But so the significance is Alaska is often referred to as the land of the midnight sun because in the summer, which is when I was there,
Mm-hmm.
the sun doesn't really fully set.
Mm-hmm.
You get these incredibly long days where, I'd pop out of my little cabin at 2 a.m. and the sun was still up.
Wow.
And even when it does go down, you don't get a full dark. You get this kind of civil twilight. So that's why Alaska is called the Midnight Sun. The come find me part, I wanted the focus to really be on the people who go missing.
Mm-hmm.
So the come find me is to kind of indicate like they're beckoning, like these people are out there. They just need to be found. And I think, even people who go missing sort of on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
like part of everybody wants to be found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why the come find me part.
Okay. All right. I get that. Is this your first published work, or do you have other published works?
Yeah, so it's my first published novel.
Oh, okay.
I have a chapbook that was published last year by Redbird Chapbooks. So it's called A Map of Safe Places. And so as you might imagine, it's stories that are all kind of themed around what it means to be safe and what a safe place is. So the settings in that book range from, a city that's going through a war. One of the stories is set in a gay club. Another is a dystopian sort of gated seaside village. So that book is out there, and then I've also published a dissertation for my PhD. So I think a good like two people have read that. I'm
Wow.
not sure if that counts or not.
Heck yeah, you put a lot of work into that, I'm sure.
Oh my God, yeah, like 4 years of yeah, not the most fun work in the world.
Then what was that dissertation on?
So I was studying writing tutors in multilingual writing centers. So for my research, I actually went to South Africa and was kind of embedded in a writing center in Stellenbosch. And so, students in South Africa, they'll say, oh, I only speak four languages fluently, but I'm learning like three others. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I was kind of studying like when you speak that many languages and when everyone around you speaks all these languages, how do you code switch? How do you switch back and forth to make your meaning known?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was kind of looking at.
Yeah. And what language do you dream in?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And a lot of the people I talked to said they code switch in their dreams too.
Really?
It
Wow.
depends who else is in their dream and who they're it's a fascinating question.
Oh, wow, that's wild. So, what was the name of your novel with the short stories?
So the short story collection is A Map of Safe Places.
A map of safe places. Okay. And
Mhm.
is that still available? Like if our listeners wanted to check
Yeah,
that out?
yeah, that's still on the Redbird website. Yeah.
Redbird. Okay. I'm not familiar with Redbird.
Redbird chapbooks are a nice little organization, a very small press, but they
Okay.
all their books are like hand bound. It's really sweet.
Oh, wow, that's neat. That's really cool. So, what made you decide to submit your manuscript to Bold Strokes then?
Yeah, and actually, it took me a while to find Bold Strokes. I probably wasted a lot of time. So when I first wrote the book, I thought I would just go the agent route because I didn't know a lot about publishing. When I started, and that's what people do, right? They query agents,
Mm-hmm.
and so I queried it with agents, and I got some really good responses. I had a lot of full manuscript requests, and I had two of them say, "Oh, well, we like it, but we want you to rewrite it." And so, one of them gave me like a paragraph of suggestions. The other just kind of said, "I'd love to see a rewrite." And so I rewrote it twice, and I realized after I'd rewritten it, it was getting away from where I wanted it to be. It didn't feel true to the story anymore.
Hmm.
And so I kind of took a step back and I said, what I really want is somebody who believes in this book as it is
Mm-hmm.
and is willing to guide me through the revision process to get it where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so the solution then became some of the smaller presses and some of the smaller publishers. And so Bold Strokes made the most sense because, Louisa's a lesbian character,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a queer author. I'm not a lesbian, but I identify most closely as Ace and Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew, with a queer publisher, you get a supportive experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard good things about Bold Strokes. I read good things about them. And, when I contacted them, they were just as lovely as I thought they would be.
Oh,
And
nice.
they've been a great fit. And my editor has been an absolute gem. Um,
You want to give a
so
shout out
they've
to
been,
your editor?
yeah, Anissa, yeah, she's great.
Oh, good.
So they've really turned out to be exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad that worked out for you.
Well, me too, because it's a scary process and there's all that rejection involved. And so when you finally find someone who says like, "Oh, hey, we like this," I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Yeah, right? It's kind of like settling in, feeling like home, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So, Louisa, right? She's like your main character, right? Um,
Hmm.
I had also read that you have already written a sequel,
Yes.
and it's due out next summer.
Yeah.
Um, and when you wrote the first one, when you wrote "Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun," did you
Mhm.
intend to write a sequel?
No. No, I really didn't, which I think was a good thing because, it started out as a standalone novel. And then kind of as I worked through it and as Anissa, my editor, and I worked through it, I kind of realized there was a lot more to unpack. There was a lot more to the story. And so I changed the ending a bit in such a way that it could be open. And so, yeah, the sequel, The Land of Death and Devil's Club, will come out in June. And that it just picks the story kind of right back up from the end of Come Find Me.
Hmm. That sounds pretty ominous. The Land of Death and Devil's Club.
Devil's Club is a plant that they have in Alaska and some of the other Northwest states. And you don't want to encounter it. It's a vicious little plant.
Oh, is it prickly?
Yes, it's got these really beautiful white flowers when it blooms, but it's covered in spikes.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of remember reading about that now that you say that. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So the story picks up then with Louisa.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Awesome. And that doesn't come out till next summer, so June-ish, right?
Yeah. So people will have to wait about 8 months to pick the story back up. So,
Okay.
yep.
So when you like, did you already have that written when you approached Bold Strokes, or did you write that after they agreed to publish Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun?
So they agreed to publish Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun. I went through the whole editing process with that. And then I wrote a proposal for Land of Death and Devil's Club. And they decided to publish that one based on the proposal, which was a little challenging and different for me because usually I'd never really done a proposal for. I usually just write the book. It just comes out, as it comes out.
Yeah.
So, but it was nice in a way because the proposal is really detailed, and so it gave me it's like working from an outline essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of writing to the proposal, so it was a different process. But that book came out in I wrote it in a month. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I wrote it really, really fast. I was living in Portland at the time, and I just kind of, my dog and I settled into this one coffee shop, and we were there for 4 hours every morning just writing that book.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That really is.
My
Um,
dog loved it.
and what's your dog's name?
That Miss Harley, she is an 18-year-old shelter mix, lab pit bull something.
Miss Harley. Well, awesome. That's funny. Our neighbor across the street had a dog named Harley, and they just moved, and the people who bought their house now have a dog named Harley.
It's funny because, her name's Harley, my name's Bailey, and so we both have dog names. Uh, People always say to me like, "Oh, Bailey, that's my dog's name."
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
And so when I encounter a human named Harley, I bite my tongue. I'm like, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to tell
Oh,
them that's my dog's name.
that's an old time name. I actually had an uncle named Harley. Um,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, yeah,
I always think of like Harley Quinn.
yeah. That's true. Um, yeah, that's a female though, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's you know,
Gender neutral name.
definitely. How about that? So, are you working on anything? Are there going to be any more books in the Louisa series?
I am always working on something. So right now I'm actually writing a Western, which is totally unrelated to the Louisa series. But I am entertaining the idea of continuing with the Louisa series. But I think what I would do is possibly switch points of view. So if you've read Tana French's The Dublin Murder Squad series,
Mm-hmm.
she does this thing where each book is written from the perspective of a different cop,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
but they're all kind of related. So you get
Yeah.
the same characters coming up. So I'm entertaining that. But there is a third book in the series that I've already written. It's not contracted yet, so
Okay.
I'm not sure, but it's a prequel and it covers the CPS case that kind of sends Louisa off to Alaska. She has this very disastrous child services case that prompts her to leave Seattle and go to Alaska, and it covers that. We'll see
Wow.
what happens with that one.
Okay, so you haven't pitched that one yet.
No, I've got it written, but we're kind of waiting. because it's been so fast with the first two novels. I want to
Hmm.
slow down a minute.
Okay. All right. So, I want to ask you about Louisa.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about her. So, what do you like most about her?
What do I like most about her?
Yeah.
She's a piece of work.
How
Um,
so?
One of my professors would say she's a study.
Oh.
There's a lot going on. She's got a really complicated history, really complicated family relationships, but she's also repressed a lot. And so things will come out and you're like, where's that coming from? But she doesn't know where it's coming from.
Okay.
But in terms of things I like about Louisa, I think even though she's not Alaskan, she's from Washington, she has this very kind of Alaskan energy to her.
Hmm.
And folks who've spent a lot of time there will know what I mean. But she's a problem solver. She's someone who's not going to sit around and talk about a problem. She's going to go try and fix it.
Okay.
She's very self-sufficient.
I was going to say
She's
independent. Yeah.
Yeah, she's really, well, to a fault, really. She
Okay.
has trouble relying on other people sometimes.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, but she is independent. She's very brave. She's very driven. She's very focused. I like that. I admire that about her.
How about would you describe her as raw?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. She's a little rough around the edges.
Yeah. Yeah, when I think of someone who would go to Alaska, just, like I would think and live there and take up life there,
Yeah.
as someone who's pretty raw. It's
Yeah, it's well, and that comes up actually a lot in the book. To live in Alaska requires a certain kind of personality, especially to get through the winter. You've got these months where it's cold and it's dark. In the middle of the winter, it's dark almost all day long.
yeah.
To be able to get yourself through that, you have to have a pretty strong constitution and a very strong sense of self.
Mhm.
And I think for Louisa, when she goes to Alaska, I think she kind of realizes there's work I've got to do if I'm going to be a person who can live in Alaska all year round. And so throughout the book, and throughout the series, really, she's working to be that person.
Hmm. Yeah, the way you initially described her just reminded me, like that's I want to say stereotypical of cops.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Alaskan state troopers are cop and Alaskan. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, yeah, it's quite a combination.
Oh
Yeah, they
yeah.
have to be really independent, really gritty workers.
Wow. So, what do you like least about her?
Oh, well, for one, she's hard to write. Um, and
Mm.
it is written from her first person point of view. So when I'm writing Louisa, I really have to get into her mindset. And Louisa has extremely severe anxiety,
Mm.
which I have generalized anxiety too, and social anxiety as well. But Louisa's is like a level above. And
Mm.
so to get into her mindset, I have to get in touch with that anxiety. It can be really draining.
Yeah.
Which is why, when I'm writing a book that features her, which is why I write it so fast. Because I want to get into that mindset, get it out, and get out of there.
Wow. That is
Um,
incredible.
and
And
I always wonder I'm sure a lot of authors encounter that when they're writing a character who has such a severe difference, like say severe anxiety or severe depression, writing them and getting into their heads is, it puts you into that same place almost.
yeah, yeah. I if you're writing about someone who is depressed, it's sad and I think
Yeah.
it impacts how you're feeling as you're going
Otherwise
through
it's
that.
not genuine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Wow.
Yeah. I
Um
think other than that though, she's got some biases, and even that she's a mixed race lesbian woman. But throughout the book, it becomes quite clear that Louisa definitely has her biases. Um,
okay.
and I wanted to include that because, just because a person is queer or is, everyone has biases.
Mhm.
And so throughout the series, she's got to work through them.
Okay. So does she kind of become aware of her biases as she goes along?
Yeah, she starts to become aware of them because she becomes aware of how other people are reacting to her biases and kind of how they're impacting other people.
Yeah.
She's not always as introspective as she could be, and so it makes it, it takes another person pointing it out for her to see it.
Yeah, definitely. That's true in life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you have I think you have another job in the writing world, right?
Oh yeah.
What do you do?
So I've always pretty much been in the writing world. I've had pretty much every kind of writing job you can have, I think. So yeah, I started out teaching English composition for college students. I actually also taught English to students in South Korea for a little while. And then for a while, I ran writing centers at universities. But what I've been doing for the past couple years, I have my own business. I started my own business, and I primarily do grant writing.
Okay.
So my clients are, universities, some of the tribes, some nonprofits, all kinds of nonprofits, really. So I write grants for them and help them find funding and do things like that. But then I also do some editing and consulting, even on creative writing projects as well. So all kinds of writing.
Yeah, that is like the total opposite. Grant writing and and writing a murder mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always joke that, grant writing is very technical. There's a lot of persuasion kind of in it. But it is still telling a story. A good grant tells the story of the project and why it's needed in of the community, especially when I write for the Native American tribes. It's telling the story of their community is so important because those stories often aren't known.
Yeah.
And if I want to get them a grant, then the funder has to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is storytelling.
The problem with grants and grant writing is that you're usually limited in the number of words or pages.
It drives me wild.
Yeah, it's like I need more pages to tell this whole story.
Yeah, and it's funny because I sit down and I'll look at a grant and I'll go, 150-page narrative, yes. And then I'm on like a page 160. I'm like, I need more time. So you end up condensing it down. Yeah. But that's always a writing challenge.
Yeah, even in novel writing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I remember one author, I think it was Allie Valley, told me that like her first novel she wrote, she sent it to Bold Strokes and they broke it up into, I think, 3 different novels. It was so long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I could see myself doing that. And actually, my editor always kind of jokes because I think the first draft of Come Find Me was like 100,000 words. She's like, this is really long. I'm like, yeah, I'll see if I can cut that down. But yeah, and with crime, thankfully, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Novels tend to be a little bit longer than a lot of other types of novels.
Yeah. Like I think, romance are usually like between like 64 and 80 or somewhere around there, a lot shorter. So yeah, awesome. So, that explains why you travel around so much, right?
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, I lived in Indiana for a long time. I worked for a university there. And when I started my own business, I realized, I could work from anywhere. So why not?
Yeah.
Sold my house and I packed up my dog and we move every 2 to 3 months and we move all around the country. And it's kind of cool because sometimes I will get to meet clients that I've only worked with remotely.
Oh, yeah.
When I lived in New Orleans, a bunch of clients were down there for a big conference. And so I got to actually meet some of them face to face, which was really cool. Yeah, it's a fun way to live.
Yeah, that's fun. That's, I know quite a few people who kind of took up that life during COVID, like during the pandemic. They were like, yeah, I can start working from home. And so I'm getting an RV and I'm just going where I want to. you know.
Yeah, I thought about the RV route, but RVs are kind of a lot of work by themselves. So I
Yeah.
actually stay in short-term rentals generally.
Yeah, it seems like there's always something broken in an RV.
And they're expensive to fix.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And it always takes a while for the parts to come in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so your consulting business, so you work with other writers, like you've been doing this for a long time, and are there any like tips that you find yourself repeating over and over to writers, like, you need to do this, or you're doing,
Oh, there's so many of them. And type of writing is different.
yeah.
Um, but I'd say that the tip that I end up giving the most is simplify. I think for a lot of people, whether they're writing a grant or whether they're writing a book, for a lot of people, they have this great idea, and when they tell it to you, they express it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as they sit down to start to try and write it out, it's like they get caught in the language
Mm-hmm.
and they overcomplicate it, and then they're like, "Oh no, I can't do it." Which is when they tend to find me, when they've gotten to that, like, "Oh, I just can't write this." So what I always tell people is keep it simple. And if you have an idea that you're having trouble getting down on paper, talk it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like explain the idea to a friend or a writing tutor, or even just like pick up your phone and record yourself talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then just write from that.
Yeah.
Because the way that for a lot of people, the way that they talk is much clearer. And you can always, add different language to it later, rephrase it later. But the important thing is to just get the basic idea down.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
That makes sense because we
yeah,
are, mostly, we tell stories orally, most
right.
of us. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I forget who said the quote, the first draft is you just telling the story to yourself.
Oh, I like
But
that.
I think, yeah, I think people forget that, especially in academic writing. People feel like they have to kind of prove something,
Mm-hmm.
like it has to be highfalutin, the language
Mm-hmm.
has to be complicated, someone should need a dictionary if they're reading it. And that's not the sign of good writing. I think the sign of good writing is to be able to take a complicated theory or story and tell it in a way that anyone can understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Those,
simplifying that.
those academics, they're always trying to impress other people.
Well, and they're taught to write like that by people who were taught to write like that. So it's almost like gatekeeping in a way.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. So, well, that's cool. That's great. Simplify. That's a great tip, and I can understand why that would, keep coming up over and over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
as humans, I think we really like to complicate things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so, Bailey, we are almost out of time. But I wanted to see if you could tell us where our listeners can get your book, Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun. Where would they go to purchase that book?
Well, the first place they can go is, of course, the Bold Strokes website.
Okay.
It releases there, I believe, on November 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And November 14th, they should be able to find it in Barnes& and Noble or on Amazon. I think I've seen it on like the Target website.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it keeps popping up and I'm like, oh, hey. So pretty much anywhere books are sold, mid-November, they'll be able to find it. And
That's
then the second book is coming in June.
awesome. And the second book is called The Land of Death and Devil's Club.
Yes.
Awesome. We will look for
I like a
that.
long and complicated title.
I know those are mouthfuls.
Yeah.
But they make sense, if you know what the book's about, it makes sense
Yeah.
for sure. All right. Well, Bailey, do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
Yeah, and I know you always do the parting words, and so I'm ready.
All right.
So I'm going to say, for any other writers out there, do yourself a favor and adopt an old dog. Like I said, I've got a senior dog, and I'm convinced that having an old dog makes you a better writer.
All
Um,
right.
because like my dog, when I take her out walking, they're slow moving. They
Mm-hmm.
stop a lot. They
Yeah.
notice all the details.
Yes.
They'll stop and sniff the same rock for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
But it makes me stop and like really check out that rock. Like, hey, what's so special about this? And you end up absorbing all these details that you normally miss. That when you go to write a book and you need a good setting, those details are right there at the ready. So
Wow.
dogs, they
That's
pay attention.
They do, they do. And that is so funny that you say that because I have a 13-year-old dog who
Oh,
I said, oh my goodness, she is getting just like my mom was. Like,
yes.
walk a little bit, stop, look around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Harley is the same way. And she makes me more social too, which I'm naturally an incredibly introverted person. I can go a week and not see anyone and I'm fine. But she makes me get out of the house and talk to people because everybody wants to pet a dog.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
it's good for me.
Oh, that's great. That's nice. That's right. And those are great words for listeners. Adopt an old dog. Everyone should.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, Bailey, thank you so much for being on the show. It has
Oh, thank you.
been a pleasure to talk with you. And we will look for your book, Come Find Me in the Midnight Sun, published by Bold Strokes Books. It comes out November 1st through Bold Strokes. And then on November 14th or after November 14th, you can find it anywhere you buy your books. Um,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, thanks again. And that is all the time we have for today. I'm Anita Kelly, and thanks for joining Liz Talk About Books, baby. So until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.